Thank you very much. The leadership of the chamber and the leadership of the EFF. We have a deputy president of the EFF here. And the national... You are not recognized. We have our national chairperson here and members of parliament from the economic freedom fighters. Well, I thought I was not going to say anything until you said there is a difference between us, because as you were coming, Mr. Santa, I was very happy that we are almost there. We're finding each other, but I realize no, your understanding of economic freedom, it's completely different from ours, because yours, it's a promotion of free market and neoliberal policies, and we are giving economic freedom the leftist radical interpretation, which means, amongst others, that the land, the banks, the natural resources, and strategic sectors of the economy should be in the hands of the people. We agree that we need to create an equality in this country, but that equality is not going to be achieved until there is a decisive state intervention. Because those who are at an advanced stage are beneficiaries of a state that protected them, are beneficiaries of a state that gave them opportunities to the exclusion of black people. And therefore, to create an impression that black people should make it on their own without state intervention, it's unrealistic and unacceptable. The state must take a deliberate decision to nationalize the land and distribute it for equal use for everyone. The state has passed a law in this country that willing buyer, willing seller. Even if people want to buy the land, if there is no willing seller, will never own a piece of land. It doesn't matter how much money we get from wherever, God knows, and then we come here and say we want to buy a piece of land in Stellenbosch. If there is no willing seller, will not buy that land. Therefore, even when we have money, we'll still not own a piece of land in our own country. So we have to get a situation where the land is owned by the state and is given to all of us, black and white. Because 80% of landowners in this country are white people. Yet 80% of the population is black people. It's unacceptable. We have to have this debate, and that's why you call us controversial and all sorts of names, because you are refusing to listen to the truth. And anyone who speaks the truth is an unacceptable person in society. And we're not saying this truth in a violent way. We're saying it openly in a frank manner. 80% of the, almost 10% of the population owns the land. And without the land, we are nothing. That's why what followed 1652 was land dispossession. Because you knew that with the land, you have everything. You've got mineral resources, you've got natural resources, and you can do anything. So we remain a conquered nation. We remain a conquered nation. And like you said, in 1987, Mr. Santa, that negotiations must go on, parties must talk, and then thereafter, business must continue. Business is continuing as you predicted in 1987. Exactly what you said. Apartheid economy is still continuing. Because when you went to the table, when business negotiated with the former liberation movement, you made certain things very clear. You are not prepared to surrender the land. You are not prepared to surrender the economy. You told them you can have a black president, but you are not going to do anything with our property ownership. When the liberation started in South Africa, it was not about voting. Voting was by the way. The formation of liberation movements followed the wars of dispossession. And Africans realized that if we fight as small groups, we get defeated. We need to come together and fight together under a progressive body. Fight for what? For reclaiming of our land. So you can't tell us we gave you 1994, that's enough. That's not what we formed the liberation for. We formed the liberation to reclaim our land, to reclaim our wealth. The economy is the land. The economy is the mines and all mineral resources. The economy is the food. There is no food without the land. The economy is the banks, retail stores. We need the participation of our people in the technology and science, because we cannot succeed to fight even diseases that can be cured for as long as our people do not own pharmaceutical companies. The diseases that must be cured easily kill our people, because pharmaceutical companies are owned by capital which is obsessed with maximizing profit at the expense of people. So we don't subscribe to those types of... All of this infrastructure me and you must agree about, which we are agreeing, will never be realized, because it has been proven that taxes alone cannot raise sufficient capital for the state. We have been collecting taxes since 1994. We still have a problem of infrastructural development because the money is not enough. We said to capital, run the economy, take charge of the economy, and through you paying taxes, then we'll be able as a state to develop this country. The same capital which we said run the economy still is not paying tax. They engage in financial illicit flows. They engage in aggressive tax avoidance in the country. No decisive legislation to deal with that. People take money in South Africa and invest it in tax havens. They are untouchable. If you do anything to them, that is an interference. The state must not interfere. People, the investors will leave the country if the state goes on interfering in the economy. So we do not agree. We have this problem. We have this problem we are having today of an inequality which is growing, which is racially based, because of the economy which is in the hands of capital. The economy is not in the hands of the state as we speak now. It's in your hands. You are the ones who are owning strategic sectors of the economy. And therefore, if anything that is in the hands of private sector is so excellent and successful, why is Africa not successful? Because the economy of Africa is not in the hands of socialist state or communist state. It's private owned. If capitalism worked for America and Europe, capitalism has not worked for Africa. Africa has not failed because of because of communist or socialist economic policies. It failed because the multinational and capitalists come and milk our resources, exploit our resources, and leave this continent without anything. So we do not agree. So a solution, which is very clear in the hands of the EFF, is that we need the expropriation of land without compensation. And people say That is extreme, that is unacceptable. Land was taken through black genocide. We're not talking white genocide. We're talking legislation passed through parliament, democratic parliament, which will say the state is the owner of the land and the land shall be allocated to people who have indicated clearly what they want to do with this land. And whether what they want to do, it is in the public interest and purpose. Because there are a lot of pieces of land all over the continent. They are idling. Some of them are even foreign owned. Yet black people live in congested environments. They do not own a piece of land. When they try to occupy the land next to them, no, that land has been rezoned, is owned by some fellow in London. We live like pigs. In Alexander, in Langa, here, everywhere else, we have no land. And that is the first thing we need to do. Expropriate the land so that we bring back the dignity of our people. There is no one who can have dignity and confidence if you do not own a piece of property. You remain a subject of those who own the means of production. We are tired of being subjects. We want to own. So we are of a view that even the mines, the banks, must be in the state ownership. But what do you do in a South African economy where already these things are in the hands of capital? You must establish your own bank as a state. To compete the existing banks, you must establish your own state-owned mining company. You must establish your own pharmaceutical company. So and by doing that, we do not shut down private ownership. The private ownership must coexist with state ownership, but the state must be the owner and the controller of such strategic sectors of the economy. Somebody is going to shout from the back and say the state is incompetent, and everywhere else where the state is found, things do not run properly. It's not true. It's not true. I'm prepared to take you on, because American Army is not private owned. It's a state owned. It's the biggest employer in the whole world. American Army is one of the best state-owned companies. This GPS you are talking about is a GPS that is produced by a state-owned company called American Army. This internet you have is produced by a state-owned company called American Army. So we must not be misled that everything else state-owned is inherently corrupt and therefore it will collapse. Even the private sector has got the same problem. The private sector, if we go to Joburg High Court here, there are private companies being liquidated every day. So it's not true that everything else owned by private sector is inherently progressive. We all have weaknesses. Yes, come back home. SAA, who said SAA never produced profit before? The SAA produced profit before until the current government messed it up. So it's not because the SAA as a state-owned company is inherently incompetent. You need a corrupt-free government which will deploy the best men and women for the job to run state institutions and not to deploy friends. This ESCOM you are talking about, it ran properly at some point. And what is good about the whole thing is that there are some lessons we can learn from apartheid, because these things were state-owned under apartheid. They were state-owned under apartheid. They did well under apartheid, but for the few. So we have to learn and say, instead of deploying cadres and party loyalists, let us get the best people to come and do the job. Now, we have a situation in a country where most of the state-run institutions did well before, and as a result of the current corrupt leadership, they are collapsing. They are collapsing, and therefore we must not say because there is an incapable leadership, state institutions will inherently not do well. I mean, we can give many examples. Singapore is one of the countries with state-owned enterprises which are contributing decisively to the economy. So we saying here in South Africa, anything that is going to help us, it is a state intervention in partnership with private sector to run a successful economy. Anyway, as you were shouting at the back, I was not shocked because I don't raise comfortable things. I must touch the nerve. And I don't get easily shaken, whether by sober or half sober people. I have no problem at all. No one get to scare me. I express myself anywhere free, without any fear or any intention of begging relationships. I'm here to articulate the EFF policy. You like it or not, it doesn't matter. We are happy that the Cape Chamber invited us, not because we share anything, but because we can exchange ideas. What is going to make South Africa work? What is going to make South Africa work is platforms like this, where we sit together and exchange ideas, sometimes in a robust manner, because it is good for our democracy. We cannot just sit in our comfort zones and not talk to each other. We have to talk to one another, sometimes uncomfortable as it might be. It's a necessary discourse because it will build this country. That's Madiba's legacy, the ability to talk to those you even disagree with. That's where we come from, and we believe that with this type of intervention, South Africa will be a better place. We've noted all those international developments, and even when it was nice time internationally, we were still doing bad, not because of the global economy, but because of the policies which were agreed to during the sunset clauses. We need the sunrise clauses. Thank you.
Mr. Santa and Mr. Malema, thank you so much for your contribution. We didn't recognize some of those points of order that were thrown out. If we could give the speakers time to respond to the questions, what I will do is I'll take a roving mic and we'll put some questions to the floor, and we'll alternate one for Mr. Santa and one for Mr. Malema.
My name is Keith Scott. This is a question for Mr. Malema. I'd just like to ask him, he did say he was going to nationalize cannabis at one stage, and that's apropos my question. This stuff, alcohol, contributes, I think, between 15 and 20% in taxes every year to this economy. And we're not going to ban alcohol anytime soon. But we do have other drugs like cannabis, which are far safer than alcohol, as are many of the other banned drugs. And I want to know Mr. Malema's view on the possibility of legalizing many of those drugs for recreational use, because they are far safer than alcohol. I'm a medical doctor and I know these things. I'm a proponent of legal regulation of drugs. And on the other hand, where we have that huge amount of money from alcohol contributing to the fiscus every year, we could have the same thing with cannabis and other drugs without the devastating effect on addicts and other people involved in the trade, which is basically a racial trade as well. It's, the laws are founded in racist ideas. And it will also save a huge amount in law enforcement, because at the moment we get nothing from the sale of drugs, which is an enormous problem. It's a huge industry, and we still have to pay for the law enforcement. So I'd like to hear Mr. Malema's opinion. Thank you.
Mr. Santa, Richard Gee, I would have liked to pose this to Julius Malema, but I'll pose it to you, and maybe he can have a comment as well. The best people for the job, does that include BEE type rules and regulations? What do you see BEE as the future?
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Oh. Good evening, everyone. My name is Marcia Mayaba. I've got a question for Mr. Clem Santa. Mr. Santa, I work in the motor industry with many first black female moments, and I was appointed for one of the automotive brands as a first black female dealer principal 5 years ago. I am now talking a different language. I would like to own my own dealership, and it seems like I'm now suddenly speaking French, because as far as the BEE codes go, they are still trying to tick the boxes at level 4, 3, and 2. I'm talking ownership, and it seems like I'm just knocking on doors and nothing is happening. And for me, I don't understand. The elephant in the room, it's which brand would not want to go into partnership with me, in the sense that I'm an experienced black female with a solid track record in the industry for over 19 years, but nobody's picking me, and I'm talking about the top 10 major automotive brands in the country.
Good evening, Mr. Malema. It's Simon Christie. I'm very interested when you talk about we and they. We're roughly the same age. I was 12 when Madiba was released from prison, and I was 14 when the election happened. I'm a medical doctor. I work sometimes 160-hour weeks. I work sometimes 18 hours a day, and I own property because of that reason. And it sounds to me that you're suggesting that I should do all that work and come to this point in my life and now just hand away my property. And that concerns me.
Oh, this one. Thank you. On the issue of the drugs, we agree that there are some of them which can be considered for use, others for medical purpose, and others for some of the reasons you have advanced. Because I'm not a doctor, but I'm made aware that most of the Western medication we take has got a bit of alcohol, and that alcohol is regulated. So and even people who don't take alcohol ordinarily, they end up taking that alcohol through that medication because it's properly regulated. The same thing should apply to any drug which we discovered that this can be used, it cannot be dangerous, but it has to be regulated so that it doesn't become a danger in society. Like marijuana, we may have to decide how we're going to go about it and ensure that it doesn't become a danger in society. And it can go a long way in creating as well opportunities for our people, and also contributing to the fiscus, because people are selling it now and the state doesn't benefit anything out of it. So if it's properly regulated, I agree we can find something. You know, you are an exceptional case. If you were to stand up and say, I went to school and I'm a medical doctor and the property I have is because I went to school and I bought it. But most of your people didn't buy any property, they inherited it. So it's an exceptional case. No, you can disagree, but the reality is that you are in possession of a land that was stolen from us. And we want it back without any apology. We want that land back, and we are going to work together. I can tell you now, whether you are in denial or not, the demand for the land is growing and people are becoming impatient. And we don't want Zimbabwe here. We don't want Zimbabwe in this country. It has to be done legally, procedurally, in a manner that is not going to put the country and the economy in a disaster. We have to talk about it. We have to say, how do we, in a proper manner, make sure that everyone benefit from this land? So, you know, Mr. Santa will know, and those who were involved in the negotiations and pre-negotiations, that when it was inevitable for democracy to be ushered in, most of the corrupt state officials began to transfer land into the names of individuals. When we're building a road in Northwest, expanding a road in Northwest from Rustenburg to Mafikeng, the state had to now get into some farms so that, because they didn't have land reserves, so they had to go and take some portions of land as they go along. And then made a call. All those who were affected by our expropriation of land, please come forward so that we can compensate you. Very few people turned up. And the suspicion is that they do not have title deeds. People just declared, this is my land. Just before 1994. So, don't individualize a big problem. It's like when I say there is racism in this country and you come to me, but I'm not a racist. I'm not talking about you. If you're not racist, why are you worried? But generally there is a problem of racism. It's not about an individual. It's a group problem. It is an institutionalized problem. We have to deal with it. And if we don't talk about it, we will not recognize it as a problem. And because we have not recognized it as a problem, now we will not be in a position to solve that problem. You can't solve the problems which you have not identified. So let us not be sensitive. I mean, you are a graduate, you are a doctor, you own a piece of property. I've got a black doctor here with me, very young also, a graduate, and he owns property. We're not taking your property only. We're talking also his property, the flat he owns, a flat size. His flat is almost the size of your bathroom for sure. But even that, we're taking from him. So it's not about a black or white. All of us, we need to surrender our land to the state and give that state an opportunity to allocate it for proper use. You can shake your hand, I'm proposing a peaceful solution. You're refusing it, you will surrender it to the revolution. The Cubans achieved what they have achieved without American intervention. The levels of literacy in Cuba happened under the American economic embargo and under the communist-led country. Cuba is highly educated. Actually, it is even producing doctors for capitalist countries like yourselves. You can't produce doctors for yourselves. The Cubans are helping you. The levels of actually the life expectancy is longer than ours. The Cubans' health system is the best. Their education system is the best. So Cuba is one of the countries that did well under Fidel, because those are the indicators you use to judge success. Not this thing we have here in South Africa, that success means very few families must be rich. The Oppenheimers, the Ruperts, and them. And then, as long as we have such families rich, and the rest of the country is swimming in a pool of poverty, and then you call that success, it can't be success. Success means the general population must be doing well in terms of quality of education, the quality of health, life expectancy. Here in South Africa, people die at an early age, especially black people, from diseases that we can cure. But because the health system is dysfunctional and medicine is expensive, we don't live for far too long. So it's extremely unacceptable that we have a situation we have. So I don't know. I think under this development between the Cubans and the Americans, Cuba will even perform much, much more better. The Chinese you are talking about, no, because they were under sanctions. Now, if the sanctions leave, and other people are free to do business with them without being intimidated by America, then we are guaranteed that people who have done well under difficult conditions, they will do well when conditions are better. You were trading with China, the whole world, they were trading with China, even when China was under the communist leadership. China is experiencing problems now, but I'm happy that Mr. Santa points to China as one of the countries which were successful under a communist leadership. So we know all those shortcomings and criticism of Mao Zedong, but those are personality cult types of politics. What is principle for me is that the Communist Party of China made China to be what it is today. And you cannot ignore China in the global economy. So I'm saying here at home, we're not proposing that there must be a complete shutdown of private capital. We want that mixed economy with the state being a leader in the economy. In Botswana here, DBS, Mr. Santa will know better than me, gave the government of Botswana 51% in the diamond mines. 51%. When they come into South Africa, next door, they are refusing. We don't just want 51%, we want ownership and control, because we can't trust capital. They will say they produce so many diamonds only to find that they're misleading us. They've produced more. So they are happy with Botswana because Botswana is just happy with ownership and not control. We cannot be happy just with ownership. We want control. My sister is speaking about black people who are involved in some of these companies. I always see black people who call themselves executives, who calls themselves owners of this and that, and in reality it's not true. I don't know of a single person, a single black person who owns anything with control and influence, not even Patrice. Patrice will never help you with anything. He's so hopeless. He can't help you because he's not in control. They claim to be in control. They are not in control. They've surrendered their blackness and they are being remote controlled by white monopoly capital. So we want a genuine black ownership and you must be in control. That's what we are fighting for. We must not be shown some cosmetic black success. People who have agreed to be captains. I don't know of a single, maybe I'm still to see that person. When we do the side visits, they bring black sisters and brothers to come and make presentations before parliament committees. And because this parliament now is different, it has got some questioning people. After presentation, we go in and we ask very difficult questions. Black managers and leaders can't answer because they are not in charge. But because they said Parliament is coming today, it will be you who present this. And then they say, this is the most senior person in this company. Okay, a simple question. What is the turnover of this company? You see, that one I will give to my colleague. And then I must celebrate that. I'm not going to celebrate that. I want, not even Cyril Ramaphosa is a genuine black success. Cyril Ramaphosa is a puppet of the Oppenheimers. They made him form the NUM after the commissioner said black unions must be allowed and they must have the power to negotiate with the employer. The NUM was sponsored by the Oppenheimers, and Cyril was given that task to go and form it. Cyril was working in the legal office, or some offices not even underground, from the University of the North. Then from there he was given the power to form NUM. From there he was fronted everywhere. They wanted to impose him on Mandela as the deputy president of South Africa, and the ANC refused. That's how Thabo Mbeki became the deputy president, and Cyril Ramaphosa got demoralized and left the ANC. Cyril Ramaphosa, because of that anger, did not even attend Mandela's inauguration, because the agenda he was representing got defeated. I want genuine black, and black is not implementation. It's about your thinking and your commitment to liberate the black nation.
Sid, we've got a question at the back here. Sid, we've got a question at the back.
Hello. Hi. My question that I'd like to pose is to Mr. Malema. Mr. Malema, I've come tonight really to listen to what you have to say. And you said something which I think was very valuable right in the beginning. You said that for many years you've been talking, but we haven't been listening. And I've had to do some serious interrogation in the past couple of months as to whether it's true that even if one views oneself as someone who is a new South African who believes in equality, whether one can really say that you do listen. And I have to be honest and say that I cannot truthfully know what the black experience is like. And I would like to request from you to assist me and to show me what it would be like to truly listen. And how would you know you've been heard? That's my first question. My second question would be, if listening, how would listening then be a two-way street? Because I think that there are two parties that could contribute. And I would like to see a great South Africa for all its citizens. Thank you.
Can we take a second question?
Good evening, Mr. Malema. My name is Clive Scholes, and I would like to leave a few ideas with you. I quite agree with you, the whole concept that the minerals in this country belongs to the people. Now, that's my first point. At the moment, we've got a reality on the ground. People that's prepared to put their lives on line, we're either shot by security guards or rock falls, and they called Samazama people. They go in the mines, with all the odds against them. The mines had deserted to a large extent those days. Why can't you negotiate a settlement between business people to allow those people, because they are trained in the mining, and instead of giving a job, let them be miners, and let they form an association or whatever to go into those mines. They will give them the opportunity to be entrepreneurs. That's the first point. The second point you're mentioning is Stellenbosch and land ownership and that sort of thing. Now, I'm living in that area, and the land, about 90% between Stellenbosch and Somerset West, I don't know how many hectares, belongs to the government, to the Stellenbosch municipality. It's leased on a 99 years to the farmers, who's been farming there now for generations. Now that's another thing. It's land that has already been developed. And those wine farmers there are ready to assist and to help and to come to an arrangement where they can train their own people to become in charge, as you say. The other thing is this about land ownership. I don't know what the percentage is, but a large tax of lands belong to the tribal authorities in this country. Now, that's another issue. It comes a long way. And in the past, the old government was accused of divide and rule, to say, you're a Zulu, you're a Xhosa, you stay there, etc., etc. But now, lately, the government that you and I had a lot of criticism about is reinstituting that whole concept. And what I can hear and feel from people on the ground is there's a lot of dysfunctioning, and the people are almost, it's like landlords that exert their power over the people. Why can't we also look at that land where the people are there to develop them? And in Tsolo, for instance, and in Kazimwabu, there is an irrigation system that is built many years ago, which is lying fallow, which can be implemented. And I think that is something that we can do, because I'm a practical person, and you are a practical person. And that's the way to resolve what we sit and what we have at the moment. So we take what we've got, we change it. We legalize those miners. We don't call them criminals. I think that's a good idea. Anyway, that's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Well, I thought the listening and the hearing may be better responded to by Mbuyiseni there, who has been a lecturer for some time, so he will understand what process it takes to listen and hear. But I'm saying here that we are now beginning to talk to each other. And we are beginning to listen to one another. It is still a difficult thing, because the way we started in 1994, we started wrongly with some artificial reconciliation, where the victims were told to just forgive and let go. And in that way, people had a lot of anger bottled inside them. And now, since we are beginning to open up and talk, and we've got the ear of high institutions, I think that the conversation will then help us to find one another. Sometimes we just misunderstand each other, even on matters that we should be agreeing because of attitude. Who's saying it? And can this people be trusted? And I understand where we come from. I mean, we're led by serious crooks, so you suspect anything that is state-related, because you are like, they are going to take everything for themselves. So even when we say, let the state own the land and distribute it amongst us, you are like, they are going to distribute it amongst their criminals, and there's going to be beneficiaries who are only politically connected. So we come from that background, and we are scared of the unknown. But I think that listening and hearing each other and talking to each other will help us find a proper solution. The Zama Zama thing, you are correct. It's like those things of fishing here in Cape Town. People are just called illegal fishing people. They must be arrested, and where is that fish? It's called abalone. People can fish that thing. They are going to be sentenced for a very long time if you are found in a position of that fish. A natural thing that belongs to the people is given exclusive rights to some multinational company which sells that thing to China, and our people can't benefit. There must be a way of, if we are worried that if it's not regulated, people are going to drown and all those type of things, then let's engage in a process of training them. Like the Zama Zama people. The Zama Zama people are ex-mine workers who are well experienced, who know everything about mining. Actually, they've been surviving for a very long time. So the small scale mining must be opened and must be protected by the state. And then we must be obsessed with security and safety of those people. So when we discover them, we then say, okay, this is how we are going to teach you so that we don't have a lot of casualties, because they die, those people. They die. And they die not because they are reckless. They do not have the necessary tools. They don't have the necessary equipment to do those things of mining proper so that they don't risk their lives. Most ghost towns, which used to be mining towns, are actually surviving today because of the so-called illegal mining. So we can make a very nice intervention there. We can make a nice intervention here in Cape Town in fishing, because people have interest there, but they are being harassed by police because they do not have fishing permits and all those type of things. So we need to train our people. 80% of land is privately white-owned land. Land Surveyor General confirms that. So there is no majority of land in the tribal authority. It's not true. It's not true. So we must agree that there must be a, if it's 80% as confirmed by such an office, then we have a problem. And we have to deal with that problem. Yes, and part of the conditions of leasing a land to a farmer will be that you are this land is leased to you for 100 years on condition you're going to train people here, you're going to do the following and invest in the community as well. Because people have been farming, but there is no an intention to transfer skill. And that's why you confidently ask the question, unashamedly, you want the land, what are you going to do with it? Because you know that you have not transferred skills to our people. So we need to begin to transfer land to the workers. We need to transfer shares as well to the workers. We need to give the workers shares, because you were so ready to give shares to so-called BEE. And that BEE, you gave them shares because they are politically connected. You are participating in corruption yourself, because you are happy to say, I want a corrupt politician to be part in my business. If this person does not have a political connection, doesn't get a BEE deal. But the real people who are doing work there are your workers. The people who are making your company to be what it is. It's your workers. You don't want to give them that 15%, but you are prepared to give it to a stranger called Cyril Ramaphosa. What is his connection? He is from the ANC. He will protect you. When they come for you, that's how he got a deal in Marikana. He said to the London mine, I'm a former Secretary General of the ANC, I'm this, I'm that, I'm well known, I can protect you. The strike came in London mine. He never protected them. No BEE partner will protect you against the angry masses. It is the masses themselves who will protect you and your business, because those people are making that company to be what it is. I'm saying to all of you here, those workers who are working for you, they are your company. If you give them shares and stop calling them workers and you call them partners, and they know that if there's slower production, it affects their 14th check. After their bonus check, there is another check coming called dividends. They will work 2 times because they know the 14th check is going to come and it will make our lives much better. Instead of giving to politically connected individuals, give to your workers. Stop promoting corruption.
Thank you, Mr. Malema.
Mr. Malema, you have presented contradictory views, actually. If I've listened to you, I've tried for the last bit. You say, let's have land for the dignity of our people. But how about taking away the hard work of others and taking away their dignity? How does this move us forward as a nation? It just says, you know, let's redistribute the land, but at the same time, let's get the best people on the job. It's not clear where you stand between those two issues, and what do you mean by us and you? And you do use the word you a lot. So it's interesting for me, listening to you, where I stand. Where do I stand in this you-ness that you're referring to? I listened to the State of the Nation address, and I listened to the State of the Nation address review this morning, and I cannot remember the presenter's name because I do not watch TV a lot, but for some reason I happened to be there. And he asked our president, and he used the quote from, I believe it's Winston Churchill, don't ask what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. And he asked him, sorry, who? Sorry, wrong one, John F. Kennedy. But that was for me a very important question. That's why I paused and I listened. He asked our president, what can you do, or what do we do to inspire the people of our country to move forward? We are talking about a brand. There is no us and them here. We are all different. Trying to say that this is Indian and white and black and Chinese and so forth is not helping us move forward. It hasn't helped us. I want to know what our brand is collectively. What does come to mind is when President Mbeki, former President Mbeki called, there was a whole brand awareness thing that goes around, I am African. That pulled on people's emotional strings. I'm not saying that's necessarily the right way of doing it, but what is it? What is our brand moving forward?
Well, I'm not asking anyone to do anything for me or my country. I'm doing it myself. So part of my contribution on what needs to be done to make this country a better place is what I said here, that if we take over, this is what we'll do. So I think that the memorized question of what you can do for your country and without asking people what they can do is not for me. I think you put it on to a wrong person. I'm not asking anyone for anything. All I'm saying is that a progressive country is a country that will address the imbalances of the past. There is still you and us. There will never be us for as long as there is no equal ownership of this country. If you have arrived, it's good for you. It's good for you. But you and us refers to the owners of the means of production and those who supply their cheap labor to survive. Majority of our people are going through a lot. And I'm not going to be pretentious and say, it's not taking us forward, you and us. No, there's no us. There's no us. We are fighting to have us. As things stand now, and it's not Malema's problem, it's an apartheid colonialist problem. They divided us. They reserved jobs for you. They reserved economic opportunities for you. 1994 did not dismantle the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. That's why Mr. Santa says there is still an economic apartheid. So in apartheid means we are apart. There's them and us. Deny it. The reality is there's them and us. I want Santane and Alexander to be one thing. To be one thing. But they will never be one thing because Alexandra is for the blacks and Santane is for the white minority. The haves and the have-nots are subjected to that congestion in Alexander. So we will never address the issue of racial division if we do not agree and speak to the reality that we are divided because ownership is racially divided. So I'm not taking any dignity away from anyone. My sister, you have a dignity. We also want our dignity back. We have no dignity. We walk like we are ashamed to be here. Especially now at night. We do not enjoy the streets of Cape Town. Because we know that we are made to feel like we do not belong here. As we walk, we are treated like we are suspects in our own country. So we are not going to be coming here and saying to you, we are nice, we are enjoying it. We are not enjoying anything. We are not enjoying anything. We are still subjects of an exploitation in this country. And exactly this attitude of denialism is the one that perpetuates apartheid. Economic apartheid we have is because you are in denial. No, there's... No, it's good. The emotions must be high because that's what truth does to people. It gets their emotions very high.
Okay. Mr. Malema, you have no authority to talk about land ownership. The Khoisan is the only authentic voice that can talk about land. We were the first freedom fighters fighting the colonials when they came here 360 years ago. We were the first people of this nation. We were the first people of Southern Africa. And today we still face oppression. This country's history did not start in 1910 when the ANC was established. Nor did it start in 1994 when you went to a democratic dispensation. We lived here, and you, your ancestors, and the white ancestors found us here. So we can only talk about land ownership as you found us here. The indigenous people of South Africa and Southern Africa needs to be restored. That was taken from them by the invaders. I thank you.
Well, I think that you are extremely missing a point. Me and you are Africans. And this land you are referring to and the whole of Africa was one thing until the colonialists came to divide us. So you must never see yourself as being something different from what I am. Otherwise, you are inviting self-isolation. We, the black African majority and the Khoisan, were one thing. And we are the only ones who can speak with authority about the Africa, the continent of African majority. So don't take away, I'm not from Europe, My ancestors are not from Europe. This Africa belongs to Africans, and that's what the Khoisan are. Don't isolate yourself, my sister. This solidarity will help us to defeat colonialist and apartheid legacy.
For the CIC, I just want to say that those who feel it know it in Cape Town. So I do agree with you around some of the sentiments you've already made. But specifically to ask you to comment around 3 core areas that you have not specifically spoken to. One is the economic CODESA that Mr. Santa speaks of. Your take on the economic CODESA in the context of what you've spoken about today around those who are enabled and who've had centuries old of enablement in the context of economic CODESA, the National Development Plan, and the context of what the EFF speaks to around the National Economic Development Plan, and lastly, the fictitious black middle class that we all speak about, that is again fundamentally funded through state-owned infrastructure, whether it's government agencies, it's government companies, or it's government itself, that's creating this fictitious black middle class. I want to hear your comments around that.
Thanks. I think we are in agreement about the economic CODESA. We needed to discuss about the land and how that land can be transferred to all. We needed to also discuss the worker share schemes. We need the economic CODESA to also deal with localization. Lot of chain stores in the country do not even buy local products. I mean, textile industry used to be something very big, especially here in Cape Town. But it's no longer that big because it has been undermined by cheap products which are brought into the country and sold by some of these chain stores. So how do we buy locally? How do we protect the local industries? And also, we need to discuss, Mr. Santa, about the minimum wage so that we close the wage gap, the apartheid wage gap, the minimum wage, and whether indeed through such intervention we will be in a position to help grow the economy. And the decisions of the economic CODESA, they have to be binding. They must bind, and then those are the decisions which will inform ultimately legislation and policy which is to be adopted by the state. So it is important that we have that a conversation. And I think we'll have that conversation because this is how it starts. It starts with us. And once we reach consensus through these types of engagement, then we say, how do we formalize some of this consensus that we are reaching through the continuous dialogue that we are having. But if we were to go to an economic CODESA when we are still far from each other, it will not be a very productive CODESA. We ought to genuinely liberate the mindset of our people and win them over so that they begin to appreciate that it is through genuine, legitimate economic freedom that our people will realize true freedom. The black middle class needs to be politically conscientized and it needs to be politicized because sometimes they confuse being credit-worthy with being rich. They do not know the difference. And that's where the banks want them to think that by affording to rent in the suburbs here, what is that expensive one there? Whatever the names. So once they qualify to rent, they think, no, I've arrived. Most of the black middle class found in the white suburbs do not own those properties. They rent them. So they are credit worthy. And being credit worthy means you are a slave of capital for the rest of your life. And you are not going to leave your children any legacy. People are inheriting farms here. Your children are not going to inherit anything, because for the rest of your life, you have been renting properties. And the NDP is just a repetition of gear. And the NDP says very little about the land question. If you do not address the land question, you have not addressed the fundamentals. You are still playing. You had to confront the elephant in the room, and that elephant is land ownership. Well, I appreciate the fact that capitalism dominates and runs the world, but that's not a justification enough for me to trust it, because its obsession is to maximize profit at all costs. It doesn't matter if that profit puts the lives of people at risk. They will go for it. So we want a system that will put people first and not profit. So we are into those types of politics. But you gave examples of countries that tried to nationalize the land and failed. And you came across as one of the well-informed person. And I know that you then deliberately decided not to speak about China, because China owns the land, and then it leases land to private sector. And it is the second largest economy today in the world. So it is not correct that if Nyerere tried it and it failed, it will fail everywhere else. We look at what Nyerere tried and how he went about it, and which are the areas that made him fail. And we learn from that and do not repeat such things here in South Africa. In as much as we do not trust capital, we do not wish capital away. All we're saying is that capital must subject itself to the leadership of government. Government must be a leader in the economy, in politics, in social aspects of our lives. In that way, we know that we are not driven by the interest of profit at all costs.
Questions. I just must thank our panelists, Mr. Clem Santa and Mr. Julius Malema, for opening up and sharing their knowledge with us tonight. Thank you so much, and thank you to everybody who came here this evening. No one has left, and we've 45 minutes over time. So thank you so much, Mr. Santa, Mr. Malema, all that remains.